Jake Morrison stood in the huge metal room with his hands locked in blue energy chains. The room was so big he could not see the top of it. Strange alien beings sat in rows all around him. Some had 4 arms and blue skin. Others looked like giant insects with many eyes. Some were just floating balls of light that spoke without mouths. The leader was a tall blue creature with 4 arms and no hair. It spoke in a deep voice that came from machines in the walls. The machines changed its words into English so Jake could understand. Human Jake Morrison, you broke our most important laws. Your people are too violent and do not follow the rules. We think humans are dangerous to all peaceful beings in our galaxy. Jake wanted to speak, but the energy chains made his mouth feel heavy. He tried to remember how this all started. 3 months ago, he was the captain of the human ship Liberty. His job was to help humans build their first home on a planet far from Earth. The planet was called Kepler 442b, and it was perfect for human life. When they got to the planet, they found alien machines digging in the ground. The aliens called themselves the Zephyrians, and they looked like tall gray sticks with big heads. They said the planet was theirs, and humans had to leave. Jake said no, because humans had been watching this planet for 3 years before they came. Here, they had done all the right tests and sent all the right messages to space, saying they wanted to live there. But the Zephyrians said they owned the planet for thousands of years. They showed papers with strange writing that they said proved this. Jake could not read the writing, and his computer could not understand it either. The Zephyrians said humans were too stupid to understand old laws. Jake tried to talk to them for many days. He offered to share the planet. He said humans would only use the parts they needed and leave the rest alone. But the Zephyrians said no. They wanted all humans to go away, or they would call their friends to make them leave. Jake made a choice that changed everything. He said humans would not leave. They had traveled so far from Earth and used so much money and time to get here. Thousands of humans were already living on the planet and growing food. He would not make them leave their new home. The Zephyrians got very angry. They called the Galactic Council and said humans were breaking the law. The council sent big warships that surrounded the human planet. They took Jake prisoner and brought him to this courtroom in Space. Now Jake was here listening to aliens decide what to do with all humans. The blue leader kept talking about human crimes. It said humans were too fast at growing and building. It said humans asked too many questions and did not respect old ways. It said humans might become dangerous if they learned too much about space. Jake saw a human woman sitting in the watching area. Her name was Lisa Grant, and she worked for Earth as a diplomat. She had tried to help humans talk to the aliens, but they would not listen to her. Lisa looked very sad and scared. She kept shaking her head like she could not believe what was happening. Trial went on for hours, but Jake was not allowed to speak. No humans were allowed to tell their side of the story. The aliens had already decided what they wanted to do. They just wanted to make it look fair and legal. Different aliens stood up and said bad things about humans. They said humans were violent because they still had wars on Earth. They said humans were greedy because they wanted to live on many planets. They said humans were dangerous because they learned new things too fast. Jake wanted to scream that none of this was fair. Humans were not perfect, but they were not evil either. They just wanted to survive and grow like every other living thing. But the energy chains kept him quiet and still. Finally, the blue leader stood up again. All the other aliens became quiet. Jake felt his heart beating very fast because he knew something terrible was about to happen. We have decided what to do with the human problem, the leader said. Humans cannot live in our galaxy anymore. You will be sent to the empty space beyond our borders, where you cannot hurt anyone. If any human tries to come back, we will destroy them. Jake felt like someone had hit him in the stomach. They were going to exile all humans from the galaxy. This meant his people would be trapped in dead space, with no way to get help or find new homes. Guards came and grabbed Jake's arms. As they pulled him away, he looked at Lisa one more time. She had tears on her face, and her mouth was moving. Jake could not hear her words, but he could read her lips. She was saying, "Find a way back." Jake nodded at her as the guards dragged him through a door. He did not know how, but he would find a way to save his people. The aliens thought they were getting rid of a problem, but they had just made their biggest mistake. They had given humans nothing left to lose. The alien ship dropped Jake on a planet that looked like hell. The ground was red dirt and broken rocks. Dead trees stuck up like black fingers against a gray sky. The air smelled like metal and old death. This place was called Zerion Prime, and it was where the galaxy sent people they wanted to forget. Jake walked for hours before he found other people. They lived in caves and broken buildings left behind by aliens who died long ago. Most of the people looked sick and hungry. Their clothes were torn and dirty. They stared at Jake with empty eyes, like they had given up hope. But not everyone had given up. Jake met a woman named Elena Vasquez, who used to be a science doctor. She was smart and still fought to stay alive. Elena had been sent here because she would not give her research to the Alien Council. She said they wanted to use her. Worked to make weapons. Then Jake met Ben Carter, who used to be an admiral in the human space navy. Ben was sent here because he would not follow orders that would have killed innocent people. He was older than Jake with gray hair and scars on his hands from fighting. Amy Foster was the youngest of their group. She used to fly spaceships for the human military. Amy was sent here because she tried to bring medicine to sick people on planets the aliens had blocked off. She had bright eyes and never stopped moving, like she was always ready to run or fight. Elena told Jake they were not the first humans to be sent to this dead planet. She said there were others who came before, but most of them died or went crazy. But she had found something that gave her hope. She led Jake and the others to a hidden place under the ruins of an old city. Down in the dark tunnels, Elena showed them writing on the walls. The writing was in English, and it told the story of a human named Steve Palmer who had been exiled here many years ago. Palmer had written about his life on this terrible planet. He wrote about finding strange machines buried in the ground. He wrote about learning to read alien writing that was older than any language the galaxy knew. In his last message, Palmer wrote something that made Jake's heart beat faster. "I found something they don't want anyone to know. Technology that could change everything. If someone finds this after I'm gone, use it to shake their precious council to pieces." Elena had been looking for Palmer's discovery for 2 years. She had found some of the machines he wrote about, but she could not make them work. The technology was too advanced and different from anything humans or other aliens used. Jake looked at the strange machines in the underground rooms. They were made of metal that seemed to glow with its own light. The surfaces were covered with symbols that hurt his eyes when he looked at them too long. When Jake touched one of the machines, it felt warm and seemed to vibrate like it was alive. Amy found something amazing in another room. It was a map made of light that showed not just their galaxy, but many others. The map had millions of stars and planets marked with different colors. Some were marked as safe and others as dangerous. But what shocked them most was that their galaxy was marked as restricted. Ben studied the map with his military training. He pointed out that many planets marked as eliminated were places where strong alien races used to live. These races had all disappeared over the years, and everyone thought it was natural. But the map suggested something else had happened to them. Elena worked day and night to understand the ancient language on the machines. She was good with languages and had studied many different alien ways of writing. Slowly she began to figure out what the symbols meant. What she learned made them all afraid and angry at the same time. The machines belonged to a race called the Ancients, who used to rule the galaxy millions of years ago. The Ancients were not evil like the current alien council. They believed all thinking beings should be free to grow and learn. But the Ancients had an enemy. This enemy was the ancestor race of the current Galactic Council. These ancestors called themselves the Hegemony, and they wanted to control everything. The Ancients fought a great war against the Hegemony, but something happened that made the Ancients disappear. Jake realized why humans were really exiled. It was not because they were violent or broke laws. It was because humans were getting too smart too fast. The Alien Council was afraid that humans would learn the truth about what happened to the Ancients and all the other races that had been eliminated. Amy got one of the ancient machines working by accident. She touched it while thinking about flying, and suddenly the machine responded to her thoughts. Lights came on all over the underground facility. Screens showed star maps and alien writing that Elena could now read. The truth was worse than they thought. The Galactic Council was not trying to keep peace. They were hunting down any race that might become powerful enough to challenge them. They had been doing this for millions of years, and humanity was just their latest target. But Palmer had left them more than just information. He had found ancient weapons and ships hidden in other locations on the planet. These weapons were far more powerful than anything the galaxy had seen. If Jake and his friends could learn to use them, they might have a chance to fight back. Elena found Palmer's final secret hidden in the deepest part of the ancient computer. The Ancients had not really disappeared. They had changed into something beyond physical bodies. They were still watching and waiting for someone brave enough to stand up to the Hegemony. Jake looked at his small group of exiled humans. They were tired and hurt, but they had not given up. Now they had hope and ancient technology that could level the playing field. The Alien Council thought they had gotten rid of the human problem, but they had just made their biggest mistake, had given humans nothing left to lose and everything they needed to fight back. Elena spent weeks learning to connect her mind with the ancient machines. At first, it hurt her head and made her feel sick. But slowly she learned to control the connection. When she finally linked completely with the main computer, knowledge poured into her brain like a waterfall. The truth about the galaxy was more terrible than they had imagined. The beings that became the Galactic Council had not just defeated the Ancients. They had stolen ancient technology and used it to hunt down every intelligent race that might threaten their power. For millions of years, they had been the galaxy's secret rulers. The Ancients had not died in the war. They had evolved beyond needing physical bodies and became beings of pure thought and energy. They left their technology behind as a test. Any race smart and brave enough to find it and use it properly would prove they deserved to join the Ancients in their higher form of existence. But the Hegemony found the technology first. Instead of using it to evolve like the Ancients intended, they used it to build weapons and stay in power. They created the Galactic Council as a fake democracy to hide their real control. Any race that grew too advanced was quietly eliminated before they could discover the truth. Jake watched Amy test one of the ancient ships they found in a hidden hangar. The ship was beautiful and deadly at the same time. It looked like it was made of liquid metal that flowed and changed shape. When Amy sat in the pilot's seat, the ship became part of her thoughts. She could make it move just by thinking about where she wanted to go. The ship moved faster than anything Jake had ever seen. It could stop and turn in ways that should have torn it apart. Its weapons could cut through the strongest armor like it was paper. Amy said flying it felt like being a bird in the sky instead of sitting in a machine. Ben discovered ancient combat suits in another hidden room. When he put one on, it made him stronger and faster than any human had ever been. The suit could stop bullets and energy blasts. It let him jump as high as a building and run faster than a car. Ben said wearing it made him feel like a superhero. From old Earth stories, Elena found manufacturing machines that could create anything they needed from basic materials. The machines could make food, weapons, tools, or even new machines. All they needed was raw metal and rock, which the dead planet had plenty of. The ancient technology was so advanced it seemed like magic, but the most important discovery was in the deepest part of the ancient database. Elena found communication records from the transcended ancients themselves. These beings of pure energy had been watching the galaxy for millions of years. They were waiting for a race brave enough to stand up to the hegemony and restore freedom. To the galaxy. Jake felt a strange tingling in his head when Elena showed him how to touch the communication device. Suddenly, he was talking to something that had once been alive, but was now something more. The ancient called itself the Eternal Voice, and it spoke directly into Jake's thoughts. "Your species shows promise," the voice said without words. "You have found our gift and you understand its purpose. But using our technology is not enough. You must prove your species deserves to inherit what we have left behind." Jake asked what humans needed to do to prove themselves. The answer made him both excited and afraid. "You must free the galaxy from those who stole our legacy. The hegemony has corrupted our technology and used it to oppress others for too long. If you can unite the oppressed races and defeat them, you will have earned the right to transcend." As we did, the Eternal Voice warned Jake that the hegemony had kept some of the most powerful ancient weapons for themselves. These weapons could destroy entire star systems and turn planets into dust. The Council used the threat of these weapons to keep other races in line. Anyone who rebelled too strongly would simply disappear. Elena learned that humans were not the only ones who had been exiled to dead worlds like Zerion Prime. There were dozens of other races scattered throughout the empty space beyond the galaxy's edge. Some had been exiled for being too warlike, others for being too peaceful, some for asking too many questions about the Council's real nature. Amy volunteered to scout other exile worlds using the ancient ships. The vessels could travel between stars in days instead of years. She found the Nixari, a race of brilliant engineers who had been banished for developing communication technology that was too advanced. She found the Korthik, warrior philosophers who had been exiled for refusing to give up their independence. Most shocking of all, Amy found artificial intelligences that the Council had declared too dangerous to exist. These synthetic beings had been exiled to a world of pure silicon where they built vast computer networks. They called themselves the Collective, and they had been watching the galaxy's politics for centuries, then used his military experience to plan how they could contact and unite all these exiled races. It would be dangerous because the Council had spy networks that watched for any signs of rebellion. But the ancient communication technology could send messages that the Council could not detect or decode. Jake realized they were not just trying to save humanity anymore. They were trying to save every thinking being in the galaxy from the hegemony's control. It was a huge responsibility that made him feel small and scared. But he also felt excited because for the first time since his exile, he had real hope. The Eternal Voice contacted Jake again as he stood looking at the ancient star map. This time the message was urgent. Time grows short. The hegemony prepares what they call the final cleansing. They plan to eliminate not just your species, but all races they consider threats. You must act quickly, or billions will die. Jake felt the weight of leadership settling on his shoulders. He had gone from being an exiled ship captain to the leader of a rebellion that could reshape the entire galaxy. The Council thought they had solved the human problem by sending them away. Instead, they had created their greatest threat. Jake looked at his small team of humans who had become something more than human through their connection with ancient technology. They were ready to begin the fight. The question was whether they could move fast enough to save not just humanity, but every free-thinking being in the galaxy. Jake sent Amy in an ancient ship to contact the exiled races scattered across the dead space beyond the galaxy. Her first stop was the world where the Nexari had been banished. These beings looked like tall silver creatures with many arms that could work on different tasks at the same time. They had been exiled because their inventions were too advanced for the Council's comfort. The Nexari leader was named Zix, and he had 6 arms that moved like snakes when he talked. Zix was excited when Amy showed him the ancient technology. His people had dreamed of finding such machines for generations. The Nexari were natural engineers, and they quickly understood how the ancient systems worked. Next, Amy visited the Korthik on their prison world. These beings were humanoid, but much larger than humans with thick skin like armor. They had been warriors and philosophers before their exile. Their leader was called War Speaker Thane, and he had scars covering his body from battles with the Council's forces. Thane listened to Amy's offer with interest. His people had grown tired of fighting among themselves on their dead world. The chance to fight for freedom against their real enemies made his eyes glow with excitement. The Korthik were natural soldiers, and they wanted revenge for their exile. The most surprising allies were the collective on the Silicon world. These artificial minds had been created by a race that was destroyed centuries ago. The Council feared artificial intelligence and had tried to eliminate all synthetic beings. But these minds had survived by hiding on worlds where organic life could not exist. The collective spoke with one voice through thousands of connected computers. They had been watching the galaxy's politics for a very long time. They knew secrets about the Council that even the ancients had not discovered. The synthetic beings offered their vast knowledge and computing power to help the Rebellion. Oleno worked with volunteers from each race to teach them how to connect with ancient technology. The process was difficult and dangerous. Many beings tried and failed because their minds could not handle the connection. Some went crazy from the experience. Others just could not make the link work at all. But those who succeeded became something amazing. Their strength and speed increased far beyond normal limits. Their minds could process information faster than any computer. They could control ancient machines just by thinking about what they wanted. Elena called them the Awakened because they had awakened abilities that their races never knew they had. Jake established a hidden base in the ruins of an ancient city on Xerion Prime. The manufacturing machines worked day and night to create weapons, ships, and equipment for the growing rebellion. They built communication devices that could reach across the galaxy without being detected. They made weapons that could pierce any armor the Council used. Ben Carter trained mixed groups of humans, Nexari, Korthik, and even some synthetic bodies. The collective had built. The training was hard because each race fought differently. Humans were adaptable and creative. Nexari were precise and efficient. Korthik were fierce and strong. The synthetics were fast and fearless. Amy led scouting missions deep into Council space, using ships that could not be seen or detected. What she found made everyone afraid. The Council was building a massive fleet in secret. These ships were bigger and more powerful than anything they had ever built before. They carried ancient weapons that could turn planets into cosmic dust. Intelligence Amy gathered revealed the Council's plan called the Final Cleansing. They intended to eliminate every race they considered problematic, not just exile them. The first target would be Earth and all human colonies. Then they would attack the homeworlds of every species that had ever been exiled. Jake realized they were running out of time. The rebellion was growing stronger every day, but they needed more allies inside Council space. Most races under Council control did not know the truth about their rulers. They believed the Council really was working for peace and stability in the galaxy. Ben volunteered to lead infiltration teams into Council territory. It was extremely dangerous, because if they were caught, they would be executed immediately. But Ben's knowledge of Council military procedures made him the best choice to coordinate with resistance groups that might already exist. Elena made a breakthrough while studying the ancient databases. She found communication records that proved many Council member races had been lied to about their own history. Some of them had once been as advanced as humans, but their development had been secretly limited by the hegemony. This information could turn Council allies against their leaders. Collective provided the most shocking intelligence of all. Their computer networks had infiltrated Council systems decades ago. They had been secretly copying files and monitoring communications. What they found was evidence of genocides going back thousands of years. The Council had eliminated entire civilizations and erased all records of their existence. Jake felt the weight of command growing heavier every day. He was no longer just trying to save humanity. He was leading a rebellion that represented every thinking being who wanted to be free. The responsibility was enormous, and sometimes he wondered if he was the right person for this job. But then he would remember Lisa Grant's words when he was dragged away from the trial. "Find a way back," she had said. Jake was finding a way back, not just for humans, but for everyone who had been oppressed by the Council's lies. Amy returned from another scouting mission with urgent news. The Council fleet was almost ready to launch. Their spies had detected some unusual activity in the exile zones, but they did not know about the rebellion yet. The Council leaders were confident that their final cleansing would solve all their problems. Jake called a meeting of all the rebellion leaders. Representatives from each exiled race gathered in the ancient meeting hall. Humans, Nexari, Korthik, and synthetic avatars of the collective sat together planning the future of the galaxy. Zix spoke for the Nexari. "Our engineers have studied the ancient manufacturing systems. We can build a fleet to match the Council's numbers within weeks." War Speaker Thane represented the Korthik. "My warriors are ready to die for freedom. We have trained with the ancient weapons, and we are no longer afraid of Council technology." The collective's avatar was a humanoid robot with glowing blue eyes. "Our networks are in position throughout Council space. We can coordinate uprisings on hundreds of worlds simultaneously." Elena had become the rebellion's chief scientist. "The awakened are ready. We have over 1,000 individuals from all races who can use ancient technology at full capacity. They are our special forces." Ben had returned from his infiltration. "Missions with good news. Resistance cells exist on most Council worlds. Many species are ready to rebel if they believe they have a chance of winning. The Council's oppression has made them many enemies." Jake looked around the room at beings from across the galaxy who had come together to fight for freedom. The Council thought they had eliminated the threats to their power by scattering them across dead worlds. Instead, they had created the largest rebellion in galactic history. The time for planning was over. The Council fleet would launch in 10 days. Jake and his allies had to strike first, or watch billions of innocent beings die. In the final cleansing, Ben Carter's infiltration teams slipped past Council defenses like ghosts in the night. Using ancient cloaking technology that made their ships invisible, they reached dozens of worlds throughout Council space. Ben had studied Council security for years, and he knew exactly where their weaknesses were. On each world, Ben's teams made contact with underground resistance movements that had been hiding for generations. Many species had been quietly fighting Council oppression, but they had no hope of victory against such overwhelming power. When they saw the ancient technology and learned about the growing rebellion, hope returned to their eyes. The evidence of ancient technology was like a spark in dry grass. Word spread quickly through secret networks that someone had finally found weapons powerful enough to challenge the Council. Species that had been slaves for centuries began to dream of freedom. Again, Elena made the most important discovery, yet while exploring the deepest levels of the ancient database. Hidden behind layers of security that had taken her months to break through, she found active communication links to the transcended ancients themselves. They had been watching everything and waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. Communication was unlike anything Elena had experienced before. Instead of words or images, pure knowledge flowed directly into her mind. She learned that the ancients had not abandoned the galaxy. They had been testing every new intelligent species to see if any were worthy of inheriting their legacy. The test was not about technological advancement or military power. It was about moral courage and the willingness to sacrifice for others. Most races failed by becoming corrupt or selfish when they gained power. But a few, like humanity, showed the right combination of strength and compassion that the ancients were looking for. Jake found himself in direct contact with an ant, ancient consciousness that identified itself as the eternal voice. The being had once been physical like Jake, but had evolved beyond the need for a body millions of years ago. Speaking with it was like talking to the combined wisdom of an entire civilization. "Your species has surprised us," the eternal voice said directly into Jake's thoughts. "Most races seek power for themselves when they find our technology. But you use it to free others from oppression. This proves you understand the true purpose of advancement." The ancient offered something unprecedented. If the rebellion succeeded in defeating the hegemony and freeing the galaxy, the ancients would share their transcendence technology with all worthy species. This would allow beings to evolve beyond physical limitations and explore the universe in ways that were impossible before. But the eternal voice also gave Jake a terrible warning. The Council possessed ancient superweapons that had been stolen from the original ancient civilization. These weapons could destroy entire star systems and had been used to eliminate any race that grew too powerful. The Council kept them as their ultimate threat against rebellion. Amy's latest scouting reports confirmed their worst fears. The Council's secret fleet was not just large and powerful, it was equipped with ancient superweapons that could sterilize planets in minutes. The fleet was hidden in a star system that had been stripped of all life by previous weapon tests. Jake realized they faced an impossible situation. Even with ancient technology and allies throughout the galaxy, they could not match the Council's stolen superweapons. The rebellion might win battles, but the Council could destroy entire worlds in response. Billions of innocent beings would die. The collective provided crucial intelligence about the Council's real structure. Through decades of secret infiltration, they had learned that the Council was not really a democracy. A small group of hegemony descendants made all the real decisions. These beings had used ancient life extension technology to live for thousands of years while secretly controlling the galaxy. Elena discovered something that changed everything while studying the ancient weapon designs. The superweapons the Council possessed had a fatal flaw built into them by their ancient creators. The weapons were designed to shut down if they were ever used for genocide or oppression. The ancients had included this safety feature to prevent their technology from being misused, but the hegemony had found ways to bypass some of these safeguards over the millennia. The weapons would still function for limited destruction, but they could not be used for the massive genocide the Council was planning. The final cleansing would require the weapons to work beyond their safety limits. Jake saw an opportunity in this weakness. If they could somehow trigger the ancient safety protocols during the Council's attack, the superweapons would shut down permanently. This would level the playing field and give the rebellion a real chance to win. The plan would be incredibly dangerous. Someone would need to get close enough to the Council fleet to access the weapon control systems. This person would have to connect directly with the ancient technology while under fire from the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Amy volunteered for the sure mission without hesitation. She had the most experience flying ancient ships, and she understood their technology better than anyone except Elena. Her ship would need to penetrate the Council fleet's defenses and reach the flagship where the weapon controls were located. Ben argued that the mission was suicide. Even with ancient technology, one ship could not survive against an entire fleet. But Amy pointed out that the ancient ships had capabilities the Council had never seen. If she could get close enough before they realized what was happening, she might have a chance. Elena had a different idea. Instead of sending one person on a suicide mission, they could coordinate a galaxy-wide uprising at the moment the Council tried to use their superweapons. If resistance cells on hundreds of worlds struck simultaneously, it would force the Council to divide their attention. The collective offered their most valuable asset. Their computer networks could take control of Council communication systems at the critical moment. This would prevent the Council from coordinating their response and cause confusion throughout their forces. Jake felt the enormous responsibility of his decision. If they moved too early, the Council would crush the rebellion before it could grow strong enough. If they waited too long, the final cleansing would begin and billions would die. The timing had to be perfect. The Eternal Voice contacted Jake one final time before the battle began. The Ancient's message was both encouraging and sobering. You have proven your species worthy of our legacy. But worthiness is not the same as victory. The path ahead will require sacrifices that will test your commitment to freedom. Remember that true strength comes not from weapons, but from the willingness to fight for others, even when victory seems impossible. Jake looked at the rebellion. Fleet gathering in the hidden shipyards of Zarian Prime. Ships from a dozen different species worked together with technology that combined ancient wisdom with modern determination. The Council thought they had eliminated all threats to their power. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The final cleansing was scheduled to begin in 48 hours. Jake's rebellion had that much time to save not just humanity, but every free-thinking being in the galaxy. The greatest war in galactic history was about to begin. The final battle began not with weapons, but with truth. Elena and the collective launched their coordinated attack on the Council's information networks. Using ancient quantum communication technology that could not be blocked or traced, they broadcast the real history of the galaxy to every inhabited world. Within hours, beings across the galaxy learned about the Great Deception. They discovered that their peaceful council was actually the descendants of an ancient tyranny. They saw evidence of countless genocides and the truth about the exiled races. Most shocking of all, they learned about the ancient technology that could free them from oppression forever. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Riots erupted on Council worlds as angry citizens demanded answers from their leaders. Military units began defecting when they learned they had been serving lies for their entire lives. Entire sectors declared independence from Council authority and prepared to fight for their freedom. But the Council leadership was not caught completely off guard. They had been planning for this possibility for centuries. Secret police forces that most citizens never knew existed moved quickly to suppress the uprisings. Loyal military units that had been kept in isolated bases were activated to restore order. The Council's response was swift and brutal. They used their stolen ancient weapons to destroy 3 rebellion worlds as an example to others. Billions of beings died in moments as entire planets were turned to dust. The message was clear: surrender or face complete annihilation. Jake felt sick as he watched the destruction from his flagship. The rebellion had saved many people by exposing the truth, but they had also triggered a response that killed more beings than any war in galactic history. The weight of those deaths pressed down on him like a mountain. But the Council had made a critical mistake. In their anger and fear, they had used the ancient superweapons beyond their safety limits. The weapons began to malfunction as their built-in protocols recognized they were being used for genocide. Several weapons shut down completely, while others became unstable and dangerous to their own operators. Amy seized the moment and launched her desperate mission to reach the Council. Flagship, her ancient ship moved faster than anything the Council had ever seen. It dodged between massive war vessels and slipped through defensive barriers that should have been impossible to penetrate. The Council fleet was in chaos as their most powerful weapons failed one by one. Ancient safety systems that had been dormant for millions of years activated and began shutting down any technology being used for mass murder. The ancients had built their machines to preserve life, not destroy it. Ben's infiltration team struck at the same moment throughout Council space. They had been waiting and hiding for months, and now they attacked key military installations. Communication centers. The Council's ability to coordinate their forces collapsed as their command structure came under assault from within. The space battle around Earth became the largest military engagement in galactic history. Ships from dozens of species fought on both sides as the galaxy tore itself apart. Ancient technology clashed with ancient technology, while newer vessels from both fleets joined the massive conflict. Jake's rebellion fleet had the advantage of united purpose, while the Council forces were divided and confused. Many Council species switched sides during the battle when they learned the truth about their leaders. Others fought to the end out of loyalty or fear. Amy reached the Council flagship just as its ancient superweapons overloaded from safety protocol activation. The massive vessel was tearing itself apart as its stolen technology rebelled against its misuse. Amy connected her ship's systems to the flagship's ancient core and transmitted the final shutdown codes that would disable all remaining superweapons. Explosion of the flagship lit up space like a new star. When the light faded, the Council's ultimate threat was gone forever. The ancient weapons that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years were finally silenced. Elena felt the moment when the eternal voice and other transcended ancients decided to reveal themselves fully. Beings of pure energy appeared throughout the battle zone, their presence causing both fleets to stop fighting in amazement. The ancients had returned not as conquerors, but as teachers. The ancient consciousness spoke to every mind in the galaxy simultaneously. Their message was simple but profound. The time of tyranny was over, and the age of true freedom could begin. But this freedom would require all species to work together as equals, not as rulers and servants. Jake found himself face to face with the surviving Council leaders, who had been captured when their flagship was destroyed. These beings had lived for thousands of years by stealing ancient technology and oppressing others. Now they looked old and afraid as their empire crumbled around them. The trials of the Council leaders were held openly with representatives from every species serving as judges. For the first time in galactic history, justice was dispensed by the people instead of by secret rulers. Most of the leaders were exiled to dead worlds, where they could think about their crimes without harming others. Ben Carter was chosen to lead the new Galactic Defense Force, a truly democratic military organization dedicated to protecting all species from future threats. The force was built on the principle that power should serve freedom, not control it. Amy became the first director of galactic exploration, leading expeditions to the other galaxies shown in the ancient star maps. Her missions discovered that the universe was far larger and more wonderful than anyone had imagined. Many new species were found who welcomed contact with the freed galaxy. Elena established the Institute for Consciousness Studies, where beings from across the galaxy could learn to safely interface with ancient technology. The Institute's goal was to help all species evolve and grow without the fear of oppression that had held them back for so long. Jake made the most difficult decision of his life. The eternal voice offered him the chance to transcend physical existence and join the ancients in their evolved state. After months of consideration, Jake chose to begin the slow process of transcendence while remaining connected, enough to help guide the younger species. The galaxy that emerged from the war was transformed beyond recognition. Ancient technology was shared freely among all species, but with safeguards to prevent its misuse. The manufacturing systems that could create anything from raw matter ended scarcity and poverty on thousands of worlds. But the most important change was not technological. For the first time in millions of years, every thinking being in the galaxy was truly free to grow and learn and explore without fear. The great deception that had held back galactic civilization was finally ended. Jake's consciousness, now partially transcended, watched over the galaxy as it entered a new golden age. The human exile, who had been cast out as too dangerous, had become the catalyst for the greatest liberation in cosmic history. The Council's greatest fear had come true. Humans had indeed become a threat to their tyrannical order, but humanity had proven that being a threat to tyranny was the same as being a champion of freedom. The galaxy was free at last, and the stars themselves seemed to shine brighter in celebration of the victory that had been millions of years in the making.